1:03 p.m. 1:03 p.m. Supposed to start at 1 o'clock. Let's say the revolution will not punch a time clock. Okay. Oh, wow. And hello to you too, Rad. How you doing? Drew says, come join the United. Okay, I'm coming. I'll be there. The revolution running late. Yeah, well, hey. The revolution, well, maybe it do need to punch a time clock. I don't even know. But I'm starting late because I know y'all know we've been going through some changes here, and I no longer have that funky fresh intro that I usually would use, listing all the BPM shows. I just had to come up from black. I was trying to find something funky fresh and couldn't find it. So yeah, that's partly why I'm late. But at any rate, my name is Thandisizwe Chimurenga, and this is Rootwork here on the Black Power Media Network. The Black Power Media Network. I'm ambitious, aren't I? Black Power Media platform. And today we want to talk about Black liberation and matriarchy. And I put a question mark in there in the title. Is that the way to liberation? Is it not the way to liberation? The first of what I hope to be many discussions. Greetings, Leah. Peace to you also. So, let me see here. Like I said, I don't have anything funky fresh for y'all. So y'all just got to bear with me. Bear with me. Bear with me. Where? I hope y'all are doing well. Now, for whatever reason, as per usual, we going through changes as a whole with Black Power Media. Hopefully, this new change is I'll be able to get it together. But at any rate, so today, again, talking about Black liberation and matriarchy. Please make sure that you have liked, subscribed, shared. Subscribe on the Patreon because at the moment YouTube is tripping on us. Subscribe to the Patreon, paid subscription to the Patreon. Subscribe on YouTube, and you will get notifications when all of the various shows that you are interested in are going to go live. And please make sure that you share the links after the shows. I think you should share the link now as we're getting ready to start. Share the link and also like the link. Because you might forget, you might get all caught up and forget later on. But at any rate, a couple of weeks ago, it may have even been a month ago, I'm not sure, I spoke with a sister who, Dania Davy, used to be with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund. She is now working with Oxfam, and we talked about not only the devastation of the climate change and what it's doing in Black communities, the damage to the environment. We also talked about the influence and the participation and the work history of Black women in this field, And it got me thinking about an essay I read a few years ago. And this essay is by Robert Jensen. Now, Robert Jensen Robert Jensen is a professor emeritus of journalism at the University of Texas in Austin. And one of my comrades alerted me to the fact that he is known as a transphobe. So if that's too triggering for folks, I want to apologize. But again, I came across this article years ago before I knew anything about his views on trans folks. And it captivated me then. And like I said, the discussion we had reminded me of this article. The future must be red, must be green, red, black, and female. The human species must acknowledge that any future that allows us to retain our humanity will jettison capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy and be based on an ecological world view. And before I forget, let me put the link to that article in the chat. See, I'm learning. Let me scroll down here real quick, though. So, I was made aware of Robert Jensen because of his critiques on journalism and how as he promoted, journalists need to be less objective as opposed to more objective. In other words, journalists need to, as opposed to continuously presenting both sides, he says in certain situations, journalists should be like, no, based upon the bulk of the research, this is what this is, or this is how we should view this, as opposed to viewing both sidesism. Reminds me of a book. Can't remember the name of the book. The author's last name is Minch, M-I-N-C-H. The subtitle of the book is I think it's called Just the Facts. Anyway, How Objectivity Came to Define American Journalism. And the book caught my eye because he has an entire chapter devoted to Ida B. Wells. And he asked the question, how do you objectively cover a lynching? How does one objectively cover a lynching? So that was the question that was asked regarding Ida B. Wells and her work. We can ask the same question today. How do you objectively cover police terrorism or police killings of Black people? Is that the way that it should be covered? Or should an analysis take into consideration historical context? So that's how I first learned about Robert Jensen. His interests are feminism and an end to patriarchy, as well as critiquing journalism. So in this article, he talks about the state of the planet, ecology, etc. He says that we will work when we come to terms with these challenges, when we face up to the fact that the human species now faces problems that likely have no solutions, at least no solutions that allow us to continue living as we have, then we will not be deterred by the resistance of the culture. We will work at accomplishing whatever we can, where we live, in the time available to us. Which brings me to the future: green, red, black, and female. Green, the human future, if there is to be a future, will be green, meaning the ecological worldview will be central in all discussions of all human affairs. Red, the human future, if there is to be a future, will be red. By that I mean we must be explicitly anti-capitalist. Black, the human future, if there is to be a future, will be black. By that I mean we have to reject the pathology of white supremacy that has for 5 centuries shaped the world in which we live and continues to shape us. And female, the human future, if there is to be a future, will be female. By that I mean we have to reject the pathology of patriarchy that has for several thousand years shaped the world in which we live and continues to shape us. Now, it's very interesting that he uses that term, the pathology of patriarchy, because my brother, Sanyika Shakur, formerly known as Monster Cody, in his last book, Stand Up, Struggle Forward, New African Revolutionary Writings on Nation, Class, and Patriarchy, he has a chapter entitled The Pathology of Patriarchy, subtitled Searching for Clues at the Scene of the Crime. So, The future must be green, red, black, and female. And not long after I had that discussion with Dania Davy, this article popped up on my Instagram of all places. The next phase of feminism is matriarchy. This was in March. And I thought, automatically reminded me of Robert Jensen. Okay, let's see what she's talking about. Feminism in 2024 is fractured between the TikTok trad wives, the repealing of reproductive rights in the U.S., and the juxtaposition of Oscar's outrage with Palestinian women getting C-sections without anesthesia. It seems the feminist cause has lost focus. For the past century, feminist movements have made incredible strides in securing women the right to vote, attend university, and assume leadership positions. In many places, women have the same rights as men on paper, but we are still far away from liberation. Fuck the patriarchy, yeah. Let's see. Now, before I get into what this author's thoughts are on matriarchy and patriarchy, I want to introduce our guest for today. I am pleased, I am honored, I'm happy, excited to, even though it's virtually, finally hook up with my sister, Cassandra Faye Floyd. She is the founder of the Release.heart.center. Identifying as an African indigenous creatress, Cassandra Faye Floyd, aka the Daughter of the Fates, is a practitioner of alternative medicine with a primary focus in traditional Chinese medicine and additional backgrounds in Ayurveda, Reiki, Reiki, and multiple other manual therapies and healing modalities. She is also an ordained reverend, founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, and founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. As a professional health consultant and practitioner, she became the founder and owner of Release Heart Center, a dynamic, complete wellness organization. But that's not where I know sis from. Okay? Where I know sis from is as a member of the African Peoples Socialist Party for several years. And she had begun, most recently, doing a series of videos on YouTube, starting with book club, book study, book reading of The Great Cosmic Mother, which is one of the books that I came across back in the day when I was first coming into consciousness. So I said, let me grab my sister up real quick, see if we can bring her on the show, and let's have a discussion, a conversation. So let me quit running my mouth and bring her up to the stage. Sis, how you doing today?
Greetings, sis.
You
How you
on?
doing?
You know what? I didn't tell.
Good,
I
good.
shouldn't tell. I shouldn't tell my business, but I'm gonna tell the BPM audience. You're here in Los Angeles with me, and this is the first time we hooking up. Is
Mhm.
virtual. That's my bad. My bad. I'm sorry about this.
Well, I moved out here right on the cusp of pandemic, so we get a pass. We
Oh,
all get a
oh,
pass.
thank you for that,
Yeah,
sis. I appreciate
we
that.
get a pass.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
unlike a lot of places, California really did look like the beginning of the apocalypse during lockdown. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? Like the South wasn't moving like that, so we get a pass.
okay. Well, I appreciate that, sis. I appreciate it. And yeah, we are gonna hook up in real life. I promise you that. Now that I'm getting around a little bit more, creeping back outside,
Mhm.
tiptoeing outside, we can do that. So
That's what's up.
you heard my introduction. I had sent you the links to the articles earlier. Oh, let me
Hmm.
see. Let me put that one, put that link in the chat also for folks who want to check that out. So yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on where we are, what's happening, and this question or this concept of matriarchy and Black liberation, is this something that the Black liberation movement needs to adopt more forcefully? Is it something that we should pay no mind to? Like I said, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, let me tell you, I appreciate you. I appreciate this discussion. I think that the discussion is long overdue. Um, I think that it is a discussion that Black women who have come into political life as revolutionaries in revolutionary organizations, it is a discussion that we have been conditioned and trained to tiptoe and tread lightly around, right? I became a member of the African Peoples Socialist Party when I was 26, I think. I think I was 26 years old when I joined the party. And joining that young and having no, serious political background before the party, I had ideas, I had opinions, but in terms of being affiliated with or trained, within the context of a veteran organization, I was brand new, didn't have no background. And so, I was so on fire for the line of the party that I didn't question anything for many, many years. I was in the APSP for 12 years. And I was on fire for the party. I was on fire for the line. And so I didn't question anything. I didn't question why there was not a culture that encouraged study outside of the political works of the party or those works that the party deemed necessary for us to study, right? I didn't question why there was not a drive towards like a deep analysis of significant historical Black authors, female Black authors in the party. And so, again, I think that it is a discussion that because, and it's not just the party. I mean, even after I left the APSP, I hired myself out to other organizations to participate, help build, organize events and programs that I could get down with. But after I left the party, I was like, I ain't joining nobody else shit. You understand what I'm saying? I ain't doing it. I'm not being no dues paying member of nobody else. I had an attitude when I left the party. I ain't paying dues to no organization. If you got something that you are participating in that I unite with, that I can get down with, that I will hire myself out to you to help with this particular piece of work. But in terms of making that kind of a commitment to another organization, I was not in a place, not ready to do that. Because when I left the party, like a lot of people leave political organizations, you leave demoralized, you leave thinking like, damn, you know what I'm saying? I done invested all these years of my life into this thing. And, where did I end up? Like, what do I have to show for that? You know what I'm saying? And I'll be honest, let me just say this. I think it's important to say this because even within the context of my own show, my own YouTube channel, I reference the party all the time. I reference the chairman, Omali Yeshitela, all the time because while I am certain that the reason that I left and the time that I left was the appropriate time and reason to leave that organization, I can still say more than one thing can be true at the same time. Right. I recognize that my ability as an organizer, the skills that I have as an organizer came through being a member of a veteran organization. I feel like we don't say that enough. So many young people these days become invigorated and on fire for revolution without cutting their teeth under the leadership and direction of veteran organizations. And that's why we see a lot of the kind of
mess.
Chaos and ill-informed ideas fronting as revolutionary movement. I feel like that's one of the things that keeps young people spinning in circles and exhausted emotionally, is because they have not cut their teeth under the direction of veteran organizations. That has to happen.
Absolutely.
And so I know that the reason I was consistently sought out as an organizer was because of this reputation I had built for myself all along the Eastern Seaboard as an organizer, was because of my relationship to the African Peoples Socialist Party. So I can recognize that. I consider the chairman O'Malley my political father. I do. To this day, it is still necessary that even within the context of the African Peoples Socialist Party, there were very real, serious struggles about the party's position in the real world. The party has a great line about women in revolution, in the revolution. You know what I'm saying? I think it's point number 14 that says, you know, we recognize the special oppression of African women, the special oppression of African women. And we want to do everything to resolve this relationship that African women have, not only to the state, but to the contradictions within our own community that, you know, appears as horizontal violence. And we believe, because we believe that African women are the equal makers and shapers of human history, right? That's powerful shit. But women in that organization, under the guise of being in positions of leadership, end up doing the same thing what African women always do in these organizations, is being worked. What did Malcolm say? That women are the backbone of the movement and men are the jawbone? That shit exists in the party. You understand what I'm saying? What did Garvey say? If you want something done well and right, get an African woman to do it. How about train African men to do the same thing? How about that?
Well,
and so it still exists everywhere.
Yeah,
We being women, we seeing ourselves as the guardians of our people's future, into these organizations, so on fire to be plugged into something that we are certain is going to change the world, to be exploited politically, and it happens a lot, to be exhausted politically, and it happens a lot, to under the guise of, I could go on, but I'm seeing extraordinary women, brilliant human beings, literally chased out the goddamn movement. Because this issue right here, we never want to address. We always talk about it. Part of the line was, when Black women talk about issues that are peculiar to Black women, then somehow we being feminist, and that's a shame. That's a shame on us, right? That's a mark on us. And the line is that once we defeat white power, you feel me? Once we overturn the state, you feel me? Then all these contradictions that we have amongst ourselves will just magically wither away. We ain't got to deal with that right now. You feel me? We can wait till we win the revolution, and then all of this shit that happens among and between Black men and Black women will magically disappear. You feel me? Table your shit till later. And
well, my position.
One more thing. One more thing. What's her name? Mary McLeod Bethune. Right, the founder of Bethune-Cookman College. Right. What did she say? One of the most famous quotes that she made, this is 115 years ago, because the issue was the same then. The tabling of African women's peculiar issues to put forward all the time, you know, the group under the leadership of African men. She said that when and where I enter as a Black woman, the whole group enters. When and where I enter, the whole group
said that.
Say that again?
That was Anna Julia Cooper who said that.
Oh, was it? Okay, my bad.
It's all good. It's all good.
My bad. I thought for sure it was her. Okay, anyway.
It's all good, though.
You know, there was an understanding even then.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Lord, the short-term memory loss. I was going to say that it has always been my position that women's issues are the black nation's issues. If we're the majority of the nation, women outnumber men. We are the majority of the nation. We are the caretakers of the people, the family, the elders, the children. If it's a woman's issue, it's the nation's issue. That's my position. That's what I promote. And
Mhm.
I see y'all over there chatting it up in the chat. I'm gonna get to y'all. But I wanted to say, full transparency. I was a member of the New African Peoples Organization for approximately 8 years. And when you talk
Mhm.
about the fact that you have contradictions within an organization, but two things can be true at the same time, I will always be thankful and grateful for the fact that a sister in a cadre of the New African Peoples Organization, Safia Omari, who is now, I
Mhm.
believe, an assistant to Chokwe and Charlemont in Jackson, Mississippi, brought to our attention for discussion Pearl Cleage's Mad at Miles. And the New African Peoples Organization was
Mhm.
my first national, internationalist organization, organizational experience. So prior to that, I had what most people have. You know, you pick things up, osmosis, the ether, discussions, or what have you. So when I read Mad at Miles, I was like, wait a minute, this sister sounds like a feminist. Okay, but now she sounds like a black nationalist. How does that them two
Hmm.
go to huh? You know, of
Hmm.
course, I find out, of course, there's no contradiction. But at the same time, I did not know her history. Pearl Cleage is the daughter of the Reverend Albert Cleage, founder of the Shrine of the Black Madonna in Detroit, Michigan, who on many occasions brought Malcolm X to Detroit to speak and was very close to Malcolm X. So that's why she had that nationalist consciousness, but she also
Mhm.
had the feminist consciousness. And I will be forever grateful for being introduced to that discussion, that conversation in the New African Peoples Organization. But
Mhm.
I feel you, sis, absolutely, which is why I wanted to bring you onto the show because you have that background and experience in an African nationalist, socialist, Pan Africanist organization, but you're also doing all of this other work in terms of your healing. And then you
Mhm.
started discussing the book, The Great Cosmic Mother
Mhm.
by Monica. I'm not sure how she pronounces her name, but it's SJOO. Let me put
It's
that.
Monica Zhu.
Is you?
Monica
That's
Zhu.
what I thought.
Mhm.
And that was
Barbara
one of the
Moore.
first books. Hold on, by Monica. What's the other author?
Barbara Moore.
Barbara Moore.
Mhm.
So when I was coming into womanist slash feminist consciousness, I was already clear I was a nationalist, but my
Mhm.
womanist feminist consciousness became peaked. That was one of the books that I first got a hold of and
Mhm.
appreciated it. And again, I appreciate you for bringing that through your YouTube videos because I know. Just because I don't see it, don't mean it ain't happening. I haven't seen a lot of black women discussing that book, so I appreciated that, and
Well,
that's why. Oh, go ahead.
um, I read when I was preparing to read the book. I read I read a interview. Was it an interview? I read somewhere that Alice Walker had said in an interview that it was one of the most important books she ever read. I was like, okay, because I was opposed to reading the book. I'll be honest. The way I got to the book, because
Mm-hmm.
I was a hardcore militant black nationalist. We call ourselves black nationalists. We call ourselves African internationalists. But I was staunch. I took the line, man. Staunchly opposed to spirituality. Staunchly, that whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a homegirl of mine was like, "Yo, you need to read this book," and I was like, "The Great Cosmic Mother: Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth." This sounds like some hippie shit to me. This don't sound like nothing I can learn nothing from. You feel me? And then
Yeah.
when I found out that it was a Swedish white woman and a white woman from Portland, Oregon that wrote the book, I was like, "Girl, what do you want me to read this mess for? This don't sound like nothing. I don't know what two
Yes.
white women can teach me about nothing about my lived experiences. You feel
Okay.
me?"
Okay.
And she was like, "Yo,"
You
she
need to
said,
read this book.
"You need to read this book,
Mm-hmm.
right?"
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I said, "I'll make a bargain with you. If this book don't hook me in the first chapter, I'm closing the book and I'm not reopening it, right?" The first page in, I was like, all right, then we up in here. You feel me? And it was important because when I left the party, I had been in the party for 12 years and I met my ex-husband in the party. We left the party around the same time. He quit the party maybe about 8 months or so after I left the party, after I submitted my resignation. And he was the one who introduced me to Ifa, right? I didn't know anything about African spiritual traditions. I know nothing about African spirituality at all, zero. As a matter of fact, when we were quote courting, the brother was telling me that when he was in prison, they would feed their ancestors. I was like, excuse me, what? Feed your ancestors? This is a member of the African Peoples Socialist Party. Like, brother, what? What you said? Feed the ancestors?
Trying to get up out of there. Got to make a way to get out of jail.
We dialectical materialists and shit. We don't be feeding no ancestors. Like those first few months that we were recording, it was interesting. You feel me? And that was always our point of contention, was the fact that he was, even though he was an African internationalist in the African Peoples Socialist Party, he was not going to relinquish, his participation in African spirituality. And the party was very hostile, not just opposed, hostile toward the idea of like African spirituality, because that's the Marxist Leninist line was like, somehow you suffering from a mental illness if you believe in spirit. What do they call it? Philosophical dualism. You understand? Whatever. So anyway, I get introduced to Ifa. We build this organization, my ex-husband and I, Black Star, the Black Star Action Network, which is now the Black Star Action Network International. That's his thing. And so, but one of the things that we really wanted to incorporate into this organization was to weave in African spirituality, recognizing that it is religion and colonial quote spirituality that was used as a strategic weapon to facilitate the colonial process against African, Asian, and Western Hemispheric indigenous people. You know what I'm saying? They didn't just come with guns. They had to colonize the human consciousness. And the only way to do that was, quote, spiritually, to spiritually imprison people, to weaken their will to resist. And to me, it made perfect sense. If you talk about being a revolutionary strategist and you don't have deeply entrenched in that revolutionary strategy, something that is going to embolden people, something that is going to make beaten people courageous against the opposition, which has always been spirituality. It's the thing that's been used to subdue human beings. You understand? And it used to blow my mind. The chairman understood clearly when he talked about how Christianity in particular, but Abrahamic religions were the foundational underpinning of white supremacy, but couldn't make the leap to say, then we have to have a spiritual strategy. We have to do something spiritually that counters that shit, knowing that our people are spiritual people. Our people are people who have always set the terms for what spirituality looks like for everybody else. And they couldn't make that leap. Couldn't talk about the victory of the Haitian Revolution without could not talk about in the victory of the Haitian Revolution, not only Dessalines and Toussaint, but Dirty Boukman and Cecile Fatima.
Yeah.
Couldn't do that. Couldn't acknowledge that it was being able to be divorced from a philosophy that terrorizes you against death because you only live once. Then you're going to go to judgment, and you either going to bust the doors of hell wide open, or you're going to go to heaven. And if you Black, the only way you can go to heaven, nigga, is to obey your master. It's to be a good servant. You feel me?
Well.
But then your ancestors teach you, no, you live forever. So whatever you do in the interest of you and yours, whenever you go and fight oppression, if you lose your life in service to yourself and your people, then guess what? Life is going to be bountiful and fruitful for you, and you'll have a great afterlife. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's what it is, as they're doing ceremony to Ogun and Shango and the like. You feel me?
Yeah.
So when I came into Ifa, it was so immediately familiar. I had never had any access to African tradition. It was instantly familiar. The scientist in me in medical school could say, oh, yes, it's familiar because you carry in your DNA, not in some ambiguous over the fuck there somewhere, in your DNA. You carry at least 14 generations of genetic memory that comes through as something. I love this period where everyone now is beginning to see clearly the ability to marry, close the gap, if you will, between spirituality and science. The gap that was created between these two was again created by somebody who benefited from creating that chasm between science and spirit. African people were always scientific people, even as we were spiritual people. African people always studied astronomy and astrology, recognizing the symbiotic relationship between the two. This is what being, we accept the dogma. Oh, I'm left-handed. I mean, I'm left brain. I'm a left brain thinker. Oh, I'm a right brain thinker. Hey, well, what about closing the chasm between those so that you can become a whole human? How about that? I'm
You
sorry.
know, no, don't apologize, sis. Don't apologize. But what you just said, though, it reminded me, shameless plug. I got a book out of some of my radio interviews over the years. It's called Some of Us Are Brave, Volume 1 and 2. And I was looking for this one piece of audio. I couldn't find it. Broke my heart. I'm still hoping I can find it and put it in Volume 3. Several years ago, Kathleen Cleaver spoke here in Los Angeles. It was an exhibit of photographs of the Panther Party, and she was basically narrating, giving the context behind the photographs. But in the Q&A, people asked her about, what are your thoughts on lessons learned, or what do you think the Panthers should have done differently? And she talked about spirituality. She said there was a sister in the party, I think her name was Ann. She said Ann went to church, and she would go to church and play, I guess, the organ. She didn't want the Panthers to know that she went to church, and she didn't want the church to know she was helping the Panthers with the breakfast program. And she said, I think that we probably should have paid more attention, or should pay more attention, to spirituality. I was like, that is just so powerful coming from her.
Can I tell you something very quick? I was at twice a year, the party used to do this thing called a party school intensive, where for 2 weeks, brothers and sisters who led the party in different locations would come to the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg. And from sun up to sundown, we were working. We were doing lectures, workshops, breakdown of the finances, the whole street work, the whole 9 yards, right? There used to be this sister who led the International Peoples Democratic Uhuru Movement in Oakland. I don't remember this sister's name, but she was the first sister to lead the mass organization in Oakland in many, many years. This girl was kicking ass and taking names. They were saying how the membership like tripled in just a few months under her leadership. She was leading all these successful campaigns, right? But she was a Christian. And her being a Christian was the reason that she had never submitted her application to join the party, because she knew the party's position about Christianity, right? So she came down for the party school intensive one day. I'll never forget it, because they were trying to win this sister to join the party. Which is why they were like, says, you really need to come, whatever. The chairman spent one whole day of the party school, and I knew in my spirit why he did it. I had been going to party schools for a decade. I knew exactly why he did it. He spent the whole day doing lectures and workshops about the contradiction of philosophical dualism. For those who do not know, the whole idea based on dialectical and historical materialism, which is Marxist theory, right? Which is ideology coming out of, the Soviet Union or whatever. Philosophical dualism is kind of the underpinning in this discussion about why Marxist, by socialists, should not and cannot believe, quote, in spirituality, right? Cannot entertain spirituality, because to be a scientific revolutionary and to believe in that which you cannot detect with your five senses is problematic. It's like having two different philosophies that oppose each other in your head at the same time. Do you understand? Now, to be a dialectical, historical materialist, meaning being able to move, change, organize, shift ideas, create new, because we recognize that evolution is one of those things that's constantly impacting how we understand the world around us. So don't you think it's a contradiction, to me anyway, to identify all of these historical references that we can point to who were spiritualists and who were still functional, successful revolutionaries? And so that the whole day he talked about how it was a contradiction to be a philosophical dualist, to believe in Jesus and believe in the revolution at the same time, to believe in God or the ancestors and to believe in revolutionary science at the same time, totally negating the work of Marcus Garvey, who we have not duplicated his type of work since, and he was a Christian. You feel me? And that girl quit the organization upon returning to Oakland. She quit the organization. So how did you win? How did African people benefit by this girl who was doing some of the most successful work in the party, in the history of the party in Oakland, and you done chased her out because you opposed to her believing in the Lord or whatever? To me, that was problematic. Not that I believe in Jesus. I'm diametrically opposed to Christianity, right? But how do you, just like what you were saying, Kathleen Cleaver was saying, how do you meet the people where they are?
Meet them where they are.
Manipulate, if you will, navigate, organize around where they are, and in the process, raise their consciousness. Not be trying to, I don't know, to me, that was a problem. And what she said is right on. Like, how do we bridge this gap again between spirituality and science, which is still the question. One thing I want to say is when one of the chapters in this book, The Great Cosmic Mother, that really helped me to articulate something I had not been able to articulate when I was in the party, but this kind of deep longing that I had, and there was no space to discuss it, was being born and raised Christian, deeply entrenched in spirituality, and to go from that to believe that there was something bigger and greater, to like, okay, it's all about the revolution, damn all the booga booga, you feel me? and go on, but to have a life and to live a life and to not be able to acknowledge or even have a place to discuss what you are experiencing emotionally, what you are experiencing spiritually, because there's no space for it. And so when I read this book, the second chapter, which is called Marx and the Matriarchy, crystal clear, word for word, the whole chapter.
We're talking about the Great Cosmic Mother.
The Great Cosmic Mother, the second chapter is Marx and the Matriarchy. It really helped to clarify some of those things that as a young revolutionary, I was not able to articulate in a way that it would have allowed me to defend a position why spirituality was necessary in the revolutionary process. Right. And the point, even within the context of this book, is that, you know, at the end of the day, socialist ideology, at least in the origins of it, was still patriarchal. It was still patriarchally centered. And it even in the discussions around, quote, women in the revolutionary process, because Mao said something about the importance of women in the revolution. You know, Lenin did a whole speech and wrote a whole book on why women in the revolution was so important. Women were still placed as an appendage to the movement. Women were still placed or relegated to an extension of, an appendage of, not central to, an appendage of the revolutionary process. The reason it's problematic is because in The Great Cosmic Mother, when she talks about this tendency today for males in positions of leadership inside socialist organizations to still not understand that when women make a struggle to address and destroy patriarchy first, it is a discussion that is centered around one, the timeline. We got the timeline messed up most times. Most times in revolutionary organizations, especially Black ones, we are taught that patriarchy is a symptom of white supremacy. And
Yes.
that is incorrect historically.
Well.
As a matter of fact, patriarchy is the great grandparent of white supremacy. So when we make a discussion, we make a statement like Kwame Nkrumah said that neo-colonialism is the last stage of imperialism. Well, white supremacy is as far as patriarchy can go. That's it. So neo-colonialism may be the last-ditch effort of white supremacy to rescue itself. Okay. But patriarchy is still the issue. And one of the things that she says so eloquently in this book, now I'm terribly paraphrasing, was that the only way that the worker can be exploited anywhere on earth is for the mother to be exploited first. This is the origin, the historical origin of the relationship between patriarchy, how it was given rise to and given birth to in the first place. That the first labor exploited by patriarchy was the ability for female bodies to reproduce real life. That's the only way the worker can be exploited.
Lord.
To be exploited.
Lord, Liz, I'm coming to join you, honey. I'm coming to join you. Ain't that what Fred said?
What you said?
Ain't that what Fred Stanford used to say? I'm coming to join you. I can't take it no more. I can't handle it. And our brother Sanyika Shakur talks about that also. That patriarchy. I think it was it Marx? Marx said woman was the first slave. Oh Lord. Oh Lord.
Thank you.
I'm coming.
And so somebody here says, I disagree. The invention of women disproves the argument that patriarchy existed in Africa before colonialism. Problematic.
That's
problematic.
Oyeronke Oyewumi. A Nigerian sister by the name of Oyeronke Oyewumi. She's got a Oyewumi. Her book, Invention of Women, talks about the imposition of Western concepts onto Africa via colonialism. And she says that there were no women for example, in her society, relationships were based upon age, or quote unquote hierarchy may have been based upon age, not based upon you are a woman, you are a man, this is your role, this is your role. So what she does in the book, she says, Anna female and Anna male, to Obinrin or Obirin. You know, she would talk about, I have not finished the book. I do need to go back over it. Maybe we can talk about that as study also. But I did want to go back over here real quick to Cheikh Anta Diop's book, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, written in 1974, where he talks about, the cultural unity of Black Africa is a profound contribution to the universal store of knowledge in that it situates the geographical and cultural origins of patriarchy and matriarchy in Europe and Africa, respectively, and shows that social systems evolve out of specific climatic and environmental factors. These proclivities predispose the inhabitants of both zones toward a particular worldview, and thus meaningful conflict. Diop also demonstrates the extensive influence of ancient Egypt on classical Greece in this work. So this is one of the books from back in the day when the first coming into consciousness that talks about how patriarchy, as we know it, is a particularly European phenomenon, and matriarchy has found its home or can find its home in Africa. And as a Senegalese man, he's predisposed to Western Africa.
So this is where, hold on just a second. This is where, again,
Let me say real quick too. This book is I think it might be out of print. This is what is this? eBay, Etsy, yeah, eBay. It's $135 on eBay. I saw it for $300 or $500 elsewhere. So if you can get a copy of the book, if you don't already have it, hold on to it.
Okay, so let me say a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because so I am a huge proponent, one, of women. This is my personal position, is that it has to be women of color that redefine and retell history in its completion. Because what we do, right? I have done it. I majored in African American studies before I went to medical school. We've all done it because so much information has been kept away from us. And I'm talking about all colonized people. We want to learn as much as we can about who we are. And so we major in, Mexican American studies or Black American studies or whatever. And we learn history very linearly. We do not learn history in a web. You feel me? What was happening in the African world as these things were unfolding simultaneously in the rest of the world. And so we get these linear ideas. I've studied Cheikh Anta Diop, right? I've studied a lot of the Black historians. Several of them are my personal mentors. I have studied under Dr. Leonard Jeffries and under Professor James Smalls, right? And so I feel like after 12 years in the party and 20 years of doing political work, I can speak with some confidence about history. One of the things that this book does, not the only one.
The Great Cosmic Mother?
Yeah, The Great Cosmic Mother. It's not the only one, but one of the things that this book does is it helps to demystify a lot of missing gaps when we tell the story of African history and the origin of patriarchy, right? Because she demonstrates anthropologically how this slow rise, which was based in our intimate relationship with the environment. Patriarchy didn't just pop up under a goddamn turnip leaf somewhere. It was the changing in the means of production that gave rise to this slow rise to patriarchy that was happening all over the planet at the same time.
Well, hold on. Let me stop you. Let me cut you off real quick. Isn't that part of the problem when we attempt to study our history, our traditions, is that books, quote unquote, or the knowledge production has come from anthropologists who are looking in from the outside?
What I was going to say, because again, I am clear about who the authors of this book was. You feel me? So it's not saying that I take hook, line, and sinker. It is having the ability to witness and understand what you were looking at any given time. And what I was going to say, in addition to that, is the fact that this is why understanding mythology and its origin is important. We hear the word myth and we think not true or not real.
Right.
Myth is an anthropomorphized way of telling stories of occurrences that actually happened in real time. So when we I don't want to get that deep, but it's important to understand the mythology. When we see the bull symbolism, right? The symbolism of the importance in every continent of the bull, whether that bull is a buffalo in the Western Hemisphere, right? Whether that bull is the cow in Africa, whether that bull, you understand what I'm saying? The bull symbolism, why is it so pervasive throughout the entire world? Why was it deified in so many cultures? I'm talking about ancient, I'm talking about 15,000-year-old cultures across all the continents. And then what did it mean for the bull? Because we're talking about in the period of history where people went from being hunter-gatherers to being able to become agrarian. And with this ending of the hunting gathering period, the spiritual ideologies, the myths changed as particularly males' relationship to the means of production changed. That's how males began to acquire wealth for the first time, was because they became the owners of the reproduction of cattle, right? And so there is a whole history, and why, again, bridging this gap between science and spirit is important. Understanding mythology will give us some insight about what happened, because the other thing is we can talk about anthropology and its origins and what's wrong with it. But the other thing that's wrong is even the things that we call history, right, have left out half the human population, which is women. What were women doing when men was inventing everything, apparently, and creating everything, apparently? What was women doing, right? And so that's why these books are important. The other two books that I will mention is this book I just read on my YouTube channel, The Great Black Mom. What is it? The Great Black Mama of Creation. This is good, but even better, and I can't find it.
With that one.
Huh?
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's by a sister named Suzar. That one's really good, but even better, and it's not the only one I have, but it's the only one I've read through, is called the Black Sibyls, the Sibyls and the Theft of African Prophecy by the Roman Catholic Church.
Now, who is that by?
That is by Mama Zogbe.
I thought that was her, Mama Zogbe, priestess of water, who was in Augusta, Georgia. She made her transition, if not last year, the year before.
It's about 3 years ago.
Oh, that long ago. Okay, my bad. I'm behind.
But the reason her work was so important to me. So, okay, so the reason that book, the Sibyls and the Theft of African Prophecy, was so important is because, again, this woman spent her whole life, her whole adult life, going from place to place, to Turkey and to Rome and all over northern and eastern and western Africa, to study these big chunks of missing history, right? And so I get it. But one of the things that she, and, even in my ELA, taught me was that, and we do it subtly, we talk about the African influence or the African origin of all modern religions. Don't we do that? Don't we do that? Even in political circles, right? Yes, we do that. We say, okay, everybody learned what they learned by us. Every single modern religion has their origin in Africa. And what do we say? That the Greeks and the Romans stole the story of Jesus, crucifixion, virgin birth, all that shit, right, from Egypt, right? That's what we say, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So we claim all that. We claim all that, right? We say that, and we can say that, but we can say, oh, all of a sudden the white people learn misogyny and patriarchy on their own. That shit just emerged from nowhere. That there were not already emerging patriarchal contradictions unfolding in Africa before they ever met a European.
They met the first
excuse me?
Before they met the first white person.
Listen, one of the things that Mama Zogbe talks about was why is it that of all the African historians that exist, why are none of those African historians talking about the matriarchal period, the pre-dynastic period of ancient Egypt? When is the last time you heard any of these Black historians do a deep analysis of the pre-dynastic period of ancient Egypt? Now, what she says,
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you.
Because the pre-dynastic period of ancient Egypt was matriarchal. But the dynastic period is a representation of the transition in Africa, the transition from the matriarchal age to the beginnings of the patriarchal age, which was defined by the son taking leadership from the mother. That's what it was defined by, right? And so she talked to, like, I had this question of one of the elder priests in my temple, because I was like, one of the things that most people do, not just Africans, most colonized people do, is we'll do something over and over and over again under the guise of tradition. Well, our ancestors always did it this way, so we're going to do it that way too. You feel me? And the problem with that is a lot of what presents itself, quote, as tradition in Africa, and I'm just talking about us, as tradition, right, are traditions imposed on our people post-colonial domination, whether it was Arab influence or whether it was European influence. A lot of what Black people still hold on to as cultural traditions have their origins in the colonial process, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, I assumed that female genital mutilation, for example, was some shit because, you know, by that time, Europeans were putting chastity belts on their women. You feel me? There was female genital mutilation in Europe and in Arab countries. So I'm like, surely FGM is something that was imposed on African people via 2,000 years of Arab slavery and the imposition of Europeans into Africa. And not only the elder priest in my tradition, but also in the book, Sybil's. She talks about how the first instance of FGM was in the temples of Sekhmet, when the only way that males were able to enter the temple as, quote, priests to the goddess was as eunuchs. And at that time, people would travel from all over the known world to sit at the feet of these priestesses who were known to cure diseases and all of this stuff. Now, I'm going to be this is a trigger warning. The way these women were able, quote, to get prayers answered or to cure diseases or what have you, was you would sit after making your offering, you would sit in front of these priestesses, and the priestesses would lay on their back and open their legs and masturbate while chanting incantations. You understand? Because the female clitoris was seen as the source of female power. Right?
No, that's why they got to cut it off.
So
got to get it out of here. Got to get it up out of here.
First instance ever written about where where a clitorindectomy happened was actually in Egypt. It was not in Europe. It was not in the Arab nations. It was in Egypt. And that's what Mama Zobe talks about. That's what, you know, it's a line. Even in, as a matter of fact, there's a book that I read called Oshun Across the Waters. It talks about it too. That
Badejo.
I don't remember who the author is.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm familiar with that book, yeah.
But one of the things that they talk about in this book was that in pre-colonial practice of Ifa, the word that we use for the ancestors, Egun, or the Egungun, right? The word Egun had dual meaning. The word Egun doesn't just talk about, quote, our ancestors. It talks about the hidden power, the collective hidden power of the ancestors, right? The hidden power, collective power of the Egun, right? Of our ancestors.
Be careful, sis.
What's that?
Because if you're going to start talking about Ifa, Odu might come up. Odu might.
What happened? What may happen?
Odu might come up.
I ain't gonna get that deep. I'm just talking about the origin of this particular phenomenon, right?
Okay.
In the Oshun Across the Waters, he talks about how the word Egun in pre-colonial practice of Ifa not only meant the collective hidden power of our ancestors to rally on our behalf in the material realm, the word was also used to describe the hidden power of the clitoris to, quote, make men do women's bidding, right? It was the clitoris held the secret power to make men do their will, right?
Oh, Lord.
I'm telling you, it's in the book. It's not my. I'm just giving you a quote from the book. Now, we conveniently forget that in the practice of the tradition. You understand? We conveniently forget a lot of shit in the practice of the tradition, but that's a discussion. That was not a discussion for another day. We conveniently forget a lot of what our own tradition tells us, not just Ifa, all the African traditions. It's interesting that the traditions in these ancestral, the rituals and the tradition of these African spiritual traditions, the ones that we hold most dear to, are the ones that conveniently suppress the power of women.
Mm.
Every time I might step on some toes, but sometimes toes need to be stepped on. You feel me? Every time somebody want to come up in the tradition and they got a Y chromosome, the first question they want to ask is, how many wives can I have? You understand? And a bunch of other things. Like, I'm a child of Oya. Like, my head is Oya, right? And I tell you, people in the tradition got an attitude when it comes to dealing with Oya. They have a level of disrespect when it comes to dealing with Oya, with how they handle Oya. And there's a reason for that. Because Oya, baby, because they know she is the punisher. She is the holder of the scales of justice. And don't nobody want that smoke. That's why they evade her. That's why they tread lightly. That's why I go to Bembe's, man. I'm a baby in the tradition. I go to Bembe's and they'll revere everybody and then forget to revere Oya. And I'll be like, yo, wait, what happened to Oya? You feel me? This was constant. And I couldn't understand it at the time until I started getting into deeply. Now, I went from hardcore, scientific, materialist to now I'm both feet first in the African tradition. Hell, I lived for 8 months in Oyotunji African village. Jump both feet first in the tradition, seeing the contradictions in both. Seeing, being in political spaces, how African spirituality would solve so many of the issues unresolved inside revolutionary spaces, then both feet first into the tradition and seeing how revolutionary organization could fill so many of the gaps, the gaping wounds inside spiritual tradition. This is, again, what I'm talking about. The bridging of this chasm between spirituality and science. Seeing in real time how their opposition is what has, in my estimation, held the people back. Part of that discussion is the fact that in none of these spaces are there organizations, elays, that are solely led by women, that are led by councils of elder women, especially in the tradition. How every elay don't have on deck, like, representatives of the EIME up in there is beyond me. It's beyond me. Because what you say you believe out your mouth don't match your actions in the real world. And that's a problem with a lot of these spaces, political and spiritual alike. We can have a good talk. We can have a silver tongue. We can say some shit that sound good. You feel me? And we do not have systems of checks and balances. We do not have systems of accountability across the board. I've had so much happen to me in spiritual life where there was nowhere I could go. I had so much done to me in political spaces. There was nowhere to go. No council of elders that was respected across the board that could say, okay, this is our judgment in this aggression levied against this African woman who is a revolutionary in this space. How dare you offend some woman who didn't give her goddamn life to the movement, to the preservation of our people's future? There ain't that space. There is no council of elders inside spiritual traditions that typically hide pariah who can come up in the tradition, get their elays, get crowned for the right dollar amount. You ain't did no background check on the dude, you feel me? Don't know who his people them is, you feel me? Where he hails from, who was he before he became a priest? How much time did he sit at the feet of some elder before being crowned? You feel me?
Okay.
These terror stories happen over and over and primarily directed at women and children. And there is no place for them to go to be judged, to be held accountable, and hopefully to be to have their behavior rectified so they become a non-toxic member of the group. That don't exist. And without it, we will forever be victimized, chasing our tails behind an opposition that ain't nowhere near smart as we are, ain't nowhere near prolific as we are, don't know half what we know, but they run in circles around us and we can't figure out why.
I'm sorry, says
I'm done. I'm done.
No, I'm looking, I'm listening to you. I'm looking at, I don't know what they doing over in the chat. Anyway, over there in the chat with these comments, it's something going on. Which brings me back to, we've got some time. It's only 2:15 right now. But as I said, I wanted to talk about this with you because of these two articles talking about the future needs to be, I'm going to change the order, red, black, green, and female, and the next phase of feminism being matriarchal. And it sounds to me, I said I was going to read. Hold on, let me read what old girl is saying, because I know some people, they get all hot and bothered. So let me read. Matriarchy is patriarchy in reverse, but not in the way you think. Okay, well, let's see what she's talking about. A patriarchy is a hierarchical social structure where men are in charge. The etymology of the word patriarchy literally means domination of the fathers. In this case, the Greek word arch means domination or rule, as in monarch or archbishop. Now, she's going to contradict herself, but I'm going to come back to that. If the patriarchy were a shape, it would be a triangle with rich white cis men at the top and everyone else organized by how much or little power their intersecting identities give them. Organizing people in this way creates and normalizes relationships of domination. The higher up you are on the triangle, the more power you have to dominate others. Then she says, I learned from bell hooks that domination and love can never coexist. Domination only ever alienates and creates harm. Yes. Seen this way, patriarchy has much more damaging effects than, quote, just subjugating women. Racism and capitalism could not have existed without patriarchy.
Come on in the room.
A climate crisis that results from dominating nature wouldn't exist without patriarchy.
Come on in the room.
Then she's got these graphics from patriarchy.
I'm going to keep talking because I'm about to grab some.
Violence, hierarchy, individualism, scarcity, domination, separation. To matriarchy, regeneration, mother-centered love, balance, community, gift economy, reciprocity, life is sacred. Now, here's a bit of a contradiction. A matriarchy is a social structure where women, mainly mothers, are at the center. The idea that every human being originates from a mother is reflected in the cultural norms of a matriarchal society. Now, here's the part. The Greek word arch also means beginning, as in archaeology or archetype. Now, up above, she said it means domination, but okay. Matriarchy literally translates to, in the beginning, the mothers. In a matriarchy, there is no top hierarchy. There is only an inclusive circle where everyone's needs are met. Now, it could be that when she says this is matriarchy, this is what she's hoping will become of it, as opposed to this is what it actually is. I think that most archaeologists, political scientists, etc. agree. Well, I won't say agree. I've read where they all say that there's never been a matriarchal society or world, or there's never been that aspect where women have completely ruled everything.
The reason they say that, you understand, for example, the first sentence in Marx and the Matriarchy says ancient women-oriented groupings were the original communism. Frederick Engels and Karl Marx recognized this. Engels especially refers to the mother right concepts of J.J. Bakunin, and both men based their analysis of social development on the primary existence of ancient matriarchies, i.e. communal matrifocal systems, right? And so why, if this was what they recognized, quote, because when Marx talks about, what did he call it? The development of, when he talks about, which was totally racist, but he talks about like the development of human societies, how you get from, quote, what he called primitive communalism to the ideal communism. And in his mind, the ideal communism was what? Was white people, making this trek up, this, I can't remember the word that he used, but this unfolding of human development, that to get back to primitive communalism. Because what did he say was defined by primitive communalism? There were no jails, there was no oppression, there was no poverty, there was no starving. Everybody shared and distributed equally, right? And he says that's primitive communalism. You feel what I'm saying? And then once white people, go through these stages, right? We got to go through that. We got to go through the feudalism and the slavery, you feel me? Then there's got to be the socialist overthrow with the state, you feel me? And then after we oppress the bourgeoisie for a certain period of time, you feel me? And then we have the unfolding, the magical unfolding of communism, which essentially in their mind was what primitive communalism was. But the problem was primitive accumulalism had only been identified where? Among people of color, all the hell over. And the other thing was, that's why it was racist. Because when it's us living peacefully and harmoniously for all these thousands of years, is primitive communalism, you feel me? But the other thing that had always been missing, even in Black power circles, recognizing that this shit was racist, that his ideas were racist, right? His scientific ideas were racist. The other thing that even they left out, Black nationalists, Mexican nationalists, the like, is the fact that so-called primitive communalism was matrifocal. It was matrilineal. What does that mean? It's not just about the society centered around the women. It meant that women had complete and total agency. That's why they'll make little nods at it. That's why we call everybody brother and sister, you feel me? Because you might not know who the father is, but you always know who the mama is. Why is that? Because she had agency. She had complete and total control over her existence, and that was always going to benefit the group. When the mother is well, the group is well. When the grandmother is well, the group is well. You feel me? They couldn't say that it was only under the matriarchies that jails didn't exist, prisons didn't exist, there was no starvation, and so on and so on and so on. You feel me? Now, the other thing I wanted to say was about this article that she wrote. So I teach a workshop. So I told you, acupuncture is my modality of healing, right? Traditional Chinese medicine. But I've been teaching over the last 4 years how doing this deep analysis of these extremes that I've come through in my life to see how they were supposed to come together, right? To go from, I was born in a Christian cult. I don't know if you know that. I was born in the end of the world cult. To go from that extreme, to go to, the African Peoples Socialist Party, to go to E5, right? And to come where I am now, to be able to see these things that are complicated, that shouldn't be complicated. When she talked about on that screen where she had the difference between the picture, the pyramid, which represented the patriarchal structure, and the circle with the circles all the way out, you feel me, as a representation of how matriarchal or matrifocal systems work. I use this a lot when I teach politically what this means, right? So everybody sees this symbol, right? The yin and yang. And most people will tell you that this symbol here, right, means balance or harmony or something very basic like that. This symbol is a 5-dimensional representation of everything in the universe. It exists everywhere. It exists in every culture. Every culture has some version of the duality between these extremes. The extremes are black and white. And then everything that exists rests in between these extremes, right? The extreme is represented by the cross, the positive extreme, the negative extreme by the thing here, right? Why am I showing you this in the context of the matriarchal social systems? Because the other thing that people are talking about right now is the harmony of the divine feminine and the sacred masculine. And we always default to like some husband and wife or mom and dad or some other malignant, opportunistic version of what this story is. The harmony of opposites expressed here is the harmony between mother and son. Mother and son, right? This is the representation. The reason that this is important, because this is also a diagnostic tool in the system of medicine that I practice. How do you maintain homeostasis in this image here? The mother is represented by the black. The son is represented by the white. The mother generates, meaning gives birth to everything that exists. The yang, which is her son, motivates, invigorates, and moves, gives the energy necessary to help the generative process, right? The reason that this is important is because when it's not an accident, and this is a few thousand years older than Christianity, what is represented as high noon here, where there's no yin present, right? This is with the sun looks good, a little bit of yin, keeping it anchored. Here at high noon, this at midnight, positive and negative, this cross represents a period in human history we currently live in that is defined by the cross, by the absence of the yin in the generative process. What does that say? We live in an age of what? God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, a disappearing of the yin essence, manifesting itself as the cross. Do you think that's an accident? They study this just like I study it, right? And so in a diagnosis where you have, and they call this, Lao Tzu said, that in all things embrace the yin. In all things embrace the yin because the yang is always destructive. That's what he said.
Well,
he said the yang is always destructive. It is destructive if not anchored by, subdued by the yin, by his mother, right? So in layman's terms, right, when we're talking about the rise of the matriarchy, is the next phase of feminism matriarchy? Is the solution to patriarchy matriarchy? From a scientific state of mind, right? If you live in a period of high noon, if say you in the desert at high noon, you actually in the desert in high noon, which is represented by yang. You in the desert at high noon. Are you praying for light? Are you praying for the day to be longer?
No.
Are you praying to sit next to for some warmth, some fire? Are you praying for any of those things? You praying for what? All things yin. You praying for the dark. Oh my God, I can't wait till the sun go down. Oh my God, I can't wait till midnight. You know, I can't wait till I find an oasis with some trees and some water. You ain't praying for more light when you are dominated and subdued by the destructive power of the light of the sun. And we live in the age of utmost yang. That's what this is called. Utmost yang. This is the period that we live in. The complete subduing of the mother, right? What does that mean? What is the mother? What does it say here? The mother is the moon, earth, water, yin, mothers, right? All the trees. You want to explain the trees? Use this. Trees, water, earth, everything destroyed. Why? Because we live in the last stage of patriarchy, which is utmost yang. The last stage of patriarchy is white supremacy, white male dominated supremacy. That's the last stage. There's nowhere else to go but for the yin to reemerge, for the yin to rise up. And what is the yin? Black and female. This is what utmost yin is. Utmost yin is the direct opposite. It is black night on a black moon. That's utmost yin. What does that mean?
I was smiling because, hold on one second. It's 2:27. If it's okay with you, we're going to finish this segment, and I want to go over here to the comment section and see if there are folks who have any questions or comments that you want to respond to. But I was laughing because brother said, I don't need all this to understand the colonial situation. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. But no, I was.
No, you do need it. You obviously need it. Because at the end of the day, don't nobody want to have the conversation about if white male supremacy is your problem as a colonial subject. If white male supremacy is your problem as a colonial subject. Black,
Mm-hmm.
red, brown, or yellow. That's our problem.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot concede that the antithesis to that is black and female. You still missing the boat. That's why these political organizations cannot accept the total leadership of African. They'll put ceremonial leadership. They'll put black women in positions of ceremonial leadership. You feel me? While still exploiting black women in these organizations. And it happens. You cannot accept first of all, you cannot respect the autonomy of African women. Let me tell you one more thing. Inside these organizations, all of them, not just black folks, because I've seen it in Mexica, militant organizations out here. I've seen it in Native American militant organizations out here. It's all the same. They holler all the time about national sovereignty. We need land back. We need our land in Africa. We need national sovereignty. We need national sovereignty. Yeah, you need national sovereignty. You command sovereignty for the group while denying individual sovereignty to women and children up inside your organizations. How that work? How that work? How that work?
Ouch.
A homegirl of mine used to say to me all the time, all the brothers could get together tomorrow, stage a revolution, take the shit. Will it change the conditions of African women and children? Will it change? That ain't no trick question.
I know. I'm not going to be the only one to answer that. I'm not going to. I'll let the chat do it. No, I'm just playing.
I'll say, not only was it not a trick question, it's not a rhetorical question. It was a rhetorical question.
I know.
You understand what I'm saying?
No, I feel you. I feel you.
And the only thing that can counter, in my mind, the only thing that can counter not only white supremacy as an institution, but also the white supremacy that exists in our consciousness as black, brown, red, and yellow people. If we make the revolution tomorrow and we have not done anything to purge the white guy living in our head, dominating our behavior in the world, especially among us. I had an elder, the woman who taught me personally up inside the African Peoples Socialist Party. Anybody that was trained by her was the one. They was the revolutionary. We wanted to get trained by her more than we wanted to get trained personally by the chairman. Gaida Cambone was a giant among men in this organization. She was 67 years old when I met her and could run circles around every 20-year-old in that joint. You feel me? And she told me something I will never forget. She said, baby, if you don't learn nothing else, learn this. That as long as this institution remains intact, the greatest battle any revolutionary must wage every single day of their life is to kill the cracker in their own mind.
Kill it in yourself.
Just because you read some books don't mean that motherfucker done gone away.
Well,
that if you are not waging a contest against white supremacy that is deeply entrenched in your spirit and in your consciousness and in your blood cells and in your DNA, you are missing the boat. How does that manifest itself? Even these people who swear there was no patriarchy in Africa before white people. Okay, fine. Let me say I concede. Even then, are you a patriarch now? Are you a patriarch now? How are your relationships with women? Not just women you interested in, not women you think you might have an opportunity to bed. Every woman that you come into contact with. Do you have a patriarchal relationship with her? Do you have a worldview that teaches you that you have some right to this person? Or do you honor her sovereignty as an entity that incarnated on this planet with their own personal destiny? Do you do that? If you don't, you a patriarch. Hell, for that matter, I'm a patriarch because that's the conditioning. Every day we see information that teaches us our valuelessness within our proximity to whiteness and maleness and all of these things. This is a challenge we have to wage with ourselves all the time. So while you may say you don't need the analysis, the scientific analysis that explains colonialism, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
Yes, yes.
Anyway.
I was thinking back about...
Let me say one more thing. If you cannot accept the idea that the sovereignty of African women is the necessary counter to the necessary antithesis to white male supremacy, you are not about that life. Now, you can sport all the red, black, and green you want to. If you cannot accept the vision of a future where African women lead and you know that the whole nation will benefit from that leadership, you ain't about that life. You about the part of the life that allows you to see yourself as the new leader, as the new mouthpiece, as Malcolm said it. You feel me? But when you get stuck, especially these political and spiritual worldviews that have men still placed at the center and can't figure out why, out of all these revolutionaries, great, giant revolutionaries, man. I love Thomas Sankara. What was the reason that Thomas Sankara was overthrown and eventually murdered? What was the reason? It was because he attempted to stage a situation where African women were sovereign citizens of Burkina Faso. That's what he did. That's when the Negroes sided with Europe to overthrow him. He said women have a right to education, and we, the government, the country, will watch their babies, will secure their children. He was the first person before it was progressive, before it was trendy among the white world, to challenge, to ban, the first leader ever to ban female genital mutilation in the country, to ban child marriages in the country. He was in his 20s when he did that. That is what a revolutionary is. You challenge the traditions that oppress humans. You challenge the, quote, cultural traditions that oppress women. That's what he did. That's what he did. And that's why he had to go. And if you ain't doing that, you ain't really about that life. You use the tradition, you use the culture to continue the oppression of people who look just like you, just like your mama. And then talk about how you with it, sporting the RBG wristband and shit. Anyway.
Don Hammond said, I never said I don't need a scientific analysis of colonialism. I would honestly say that the evaluation being presented is divorced from science.
Okay, you got it. You got it. You got it. You got it. What's your background? Why? What's your background? What's your history?
Oh, well, hold on.
Who did you study under? Who are your elders?
We got one more. That's Cap, sister. That's not why they turned on him. Come on, talking about Sankara.
What? Oh, that's Cap?
That's Cap.
No. There was a number of reasons they turned on Sankara, but everything that they turned on him about primarily centered around women and Burkina Faso's ability to do for itself. Because the reason Europe got mad and the Negroes sided with him, the chiefs sided against him with Europe, was because he shut down the borders. He was like, if it ain't black made, it ain't coming up in here. What did he do? He banned Africans in Burkina Faso from wearing European made clothes. We ain't importing no jeans. We ain't importing no t-shirts. None of that. Not only that, they gonna pay us top dollar for our production of cotton. Everything we need, we can make right here in Burkina Faso. That's what he did. Took all the rich Negroes, Rolls Royces away, gave them Pintos and shit. Yeah, no. Y'all don't want to jock his style, you know, Thomas Sankara, because he was not one that talked shit. Right out the gate with the seizure of power, he said, this is how we're gonna set the whole continent off, baby. First of all, we're gonna liberate our women. We ain't gonna be up in here talking about we gonna lead a socialist revolution and our women are still second-class citizens in the society. We ain't doing that. So say what you want, you understand? I know my history. And I'm 50 years old. I can probably say I am not above correction, but I can probably say I know more than you. And I mean, how you gonna challenge me on science? I got 4 degrees in science.
Okay.
4 degrees in science.
Okay.
Not just degrees alone, because I understand the function of colonial education, but baby, I went to medical school as a revolutionary. I didn't go in with a colonial mentality. I went in as a revolutionary with engaged in a process to create a politically centered revolutionary medical apparatus for my organization. So I'm sorry. That's why I don't debate with men. Unless you can prove you know more than me, there ain't no need for me to debate you.
Oh, you said the words. I don't debate with men.
I want y'all to be clear. I do not hate men at all. As a matter of fact, I love men to a fault, probably to my detriment, probably. But I still, like most women, hold out hope for you. I hold out hope that you too can come to the right conclusion and see that your oppression is tied, centrally tied, to the oppression of Black women. Your oppression could not be what it is without first your mama having been oppressed, without her being forced to, whether politically, whether culturally, to give birth to a child under social circumstances that did not allow her to raise that child in a thriving, non-hostile environment where you, born to your Black mama, entered into a world as a sovereign being where even as an infant, your sovereignty is honored and protected. You weren't born in that world. And that world that is absent individual sovereignty is what we all suffer from. So when we talk about changing the world, when we talk about the necessity of Black-centered organizations, stop talking out both sides of your mouth to honor the Black woman. Ifa spiritual tradition saying that the mothers are the center of the tradition, but nothing in how the tradition is handled in real time is indicative of this reverence that you give lip service to the mothers. You stop doing that. That you have to either believe that it's so and move accordingly. That don't mean ceremonially. That means in your intimate relationships with every woman that you come into contact with. To honor the sovereignty of women, to uphold the possibility that we can do more, that we can lead, and in our leadership, we will carry the group forward. We done did this a long time. Now it's time to do something different. And so don't be offended by a discussion where Black women are talking about, is the matriarchy, because I've never considered myself a feminist. There are ideas about feminism in the first and the second and third wave that I'm like, okay, yeah, that I can rock with. But before there was a creature called feminism, what was there? Even in our own neighborhoods growing up. I ain't even talking about way back when somewhere. I'm talking about, okay, fine, if you don't believe matriarchy ever existed nowhere in history, okay, how about the neighborhood you grew up in, where even these women who knew each other in the neighborhood, if one sister was down and out until her money came, the other sisters would say, just send your baby to our house for breakfast until you get right, and then they'll do the same thing for you. That's a matriarchy, where African women rescued the community throughout the whole history of this country. It is African women's back and fucking labor that rescued African people in this country. We don't give no props to that because that's just what we're supposed to do. You feel me? That's just what so that don't get no props. You feel me? And we ain't got no time for that. We do not have any time for that. If you are genuinely serious in changing the world, any of you, Black, red, brown, yellow, you feel me? If you're genuinely, let your women lead for a change. Stop relegating the significance of who your mothers are to the back burners and the dustbins of history. There is no great man alive, not one, not nowhere, whose genius just emanated from nowhere. He got his genius from his mama. He got his genius from his mama. I don't care who it was. I don't care who it was. I don't want to hear about no more genius men. I'm sorry. I want to know who their mama was. What was her life?
Who your mama now?
Endure for his genius. Who was his wife? What does she have to do to secure and protect and nurture his genius? That's what I want to know about. Because you are not who you are without one, the blood of your mother and her birth water consecrating your being here. It is her blood as a ritual on your crown and your baptism in her holy water that secured your life here. That's the first covenant. That's the first blood covenant on earth. Is your mama allowing you to split her open so that you can exist? And then her saying, I'm going to nurture you. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to let you leach from my body, my own essence to secure your life until you can fulfill your own personal destiny. I'm going to do that for you. So yeah, there's my, I'm shutting up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm on. We need to take that question mark. Take that question mark off. Black liberation and matriarchy. Yeah.
Is that a question mark?
Well, that's the way. It's set up. That's the title.
Oh, okay.
Black liberation and matriarchy with a question mark.
Okay. I was like, did I not answer the question? I might not have been clear. I
No,
think I was clear, but
you clear for me.
Okay. Yes.
And your father's blood as well. What are we talking about? Laughing. Hold on.
Talk about missing the boat consistently and conveniently, but okay.
Shout out to August 3rd and brother Haki Kweli Shakur. I see you, brother. Excuse my voice. So
what blood? Wait a minute. What did he say? Your father's blood too? What blood? What blood? What suffering did your father do to get you here? What sacrifice, what ceremony did your father perform for you to be here? Now you want to talk about science? Biologically? Where is the suffering that he did? As far as I know, all he did was have an orgasm. And guess what? You feel me? I'm not being obtuse. I'm being very specific. It is the mother. That's why. So that is why when I say this is a scientific analysis, this is not esotericism. When it says the mother and son relationship, it doesn't say mother and daughter, because the daughter biologically is self, right? We know that all across the board. The daughter of a mother is biologically self. It is the son, right? It is the Y chromosome that is the genetic mutation necessary to guarantee genetic diversity among the species. That is the role, that is the purpose of the Y chromosome, of the mutation of the double X chromosome to the Y chromosome is to secure genetic diversity among the group, right? Among the species, any species, not just people, among any species, the Y chromosome, it is specifically designed to address certain issues and to secure certain genetic diversity. That's it. That's the only purpose that it serves. I'm not diminishing, and that's not a diminishing of the significance of what males are or who males are. That's not what it's recognizing your role within the scientific biological process of reproduction of human life. That is to say that all males, one, are half female. That's one thing. That's one thing. It is to acknowledge, too, that all mitochondrial DNA come from your mama. All what y'all call the Eve gene, all mitochondrial DNA comes from your mother. The Y chromosome is to do now what it has done for 1.5 million years, is to secure genetic diversity among the species so that it could adequately adapt to its environment. This is what we call evolution. And I'm not talking about Darwinism. I'm talking about evolution, the unfolding of through the reproductive process of human life or species life. You feel me? So when I ask the question, that's why this scientific analysis of the unfolding of the entire universe does not say that this is the mother and this is the father. That's why it say that. It don't say this is the mother and this is the father. It is the mother and the son, because before there was ever a father in human history. That's why the story had to be changed. That's why the story had to be changed by Abrahamic religions. Before there was a father anywhere in human history, in any story in human history, and any mythology in human history, there was a mother before there ever was a father. Every father since the beginning of time started as a son. That's why that diagram says that harmony is between the mother and the son. Your Bible, for those of you who hog-tied to the Bible, it's in there too if you know how to read your book.
You said hog-tied.
That's what I see it.
That don't look scientific. That looks like a spiritual interpretation. You know what? Okay. I'm
done with this guy.
I'm gonna get
what I said. I see what I see. I say what I said.
Yeah.
That's what autonomy is, honey. Either it's for you or it ain't, and that's cool. My feelings ain't swayed neither way. I know what I know.
Were there stated motivations for going from the pre-dynastic matriarchal to the dynastic patriarchal in Africa? Could you speak on how the shift from environmental means of production got and then it's cut off?
Okay, so short version is, all right, so we all hunter-gatherers, right? The origin of us is sub-Saharan Africa. We hunter-gatherers, which is defined by what? People carrying very little stuff around, posting up campsites, tailing behind herds so that they have a steady, they have steady access to meat. The gatherers typically were female, right? The gatherers, this is how they say the first doctors and so on came to be, was a relationship that the females had to the gathering process, learning over long periods of time what berries you can and can't eat, what twigs, branches, and roots were healing, which ones were poisonous, so on and so forth, right? While the males and these clans centered around the mothers. Why? Because the mothers kept the campsite. The mothers collectively tended to the babies, tended to the young, and they did this around these temporary campsites that centered around the fire, right? While the males would go out for longer periods of time, anywhere from 1 to 6 weeks, hunting, chasing herds, right? And that's how these things unfolded. Well, over time, over millennia, the women would recognize, oh, if I spit this seed out, if we wait a little while, something will come up out of the ground where we spit out this seed. The whole transition from the hunting gathering epoch to the agrarian age, which what the agrarian age supposedly began around 15,000 years ago, where we stopped hunting and gathering following herds, to now we start to have our first townships, clans, tribes, where we don't move. We don't have to move because now we control the means of production. We can now control how food grows because we've been observing the environment. We know when it's going to rain. We know when it's going to be dry. You feel me? Now, when men come back from the hunt and they've done caught a cub of some animal that they had hunted, they done killed the mama, and so they saved the babies. The women were the ones that were responsible historically for the domestication of animals. The women were responsible for the agricultural process, right? Well, when men don't have to hunt anymore, let me see what she just said about this. Hold on. I knew this was going to come up. Hold on. Page 241. Is that what it is? Page 238. I'm going to read you something. But when she talks about how this slow transition, what happens if men who even their ceremonial practices centered around this activity defined their relationship to the circle of women. It was their ability as men to go and hunt game. And so now you start to see in history ceremony and ceremonial practices that defined men's relationship to the clan, which was in the hunt, right? So you'll see cave paintings of men dressing up like the animal, creating dances to mimic the animal, to pay honor to this animal that sacrificed its life for the group. This is where ceremony emerged out of, right? And so once the hunting gathering epoch was coming to its close, now you have a whole group of men throughout the known world who were experiencing this thing at the same time, right? Without a process that defined them in their relationship to the group. When there is no longer a necessary need for the hunt, what were the men gonna do? They started to take over practices already established in the clan. If women were the ones that began the process of planting and sowing, right? Planting, sowing, and reaping. If women were the ones that established the domestication of animals, what we call husbandry now, it became husbandry when men were given ownership of the reproduction of those animals now that they no longer have to hunt. Cattle being the first of those animals, right? And so hold on 280, if I have just a second, I ain't gonna read the whole thing. But let's see.
Sanyika Shakur also talks about the domestication of animals. Stand up, struggle forward.
So stand up, struggle forward.
Stand up, struggle forward. Sanyika Shakur. What did he call it? I don't forget. What it was the pathology of patriarchy. Searching for clues.
I need to read this book.
That's the section in Stand Up, Struggle Forward.
Okay, let me write that down. Or yeah, can you put it in the?
Well, you have to go back. I'll put it up again.
Okay. So the thing is when I start talking about this, is it's so difficult for us to believe that this transition in the means of production among human beings around 15,000 years ago could be the seed or the beginning of patriarchy. But we right now, even as so-called socialists, and I'm not a socialist, but even so-called socialists talk about the primary issue at hand confronting all human beings is what? Is to ensure a revolutionary process that changes the hands of the means of production from what? Private ownership of capital and the social creation of capital, that triangle that you showed earlier, to the social creation of capital and the social ownership of capital, right? So why, if the means of production is the primary issue of the socialists and why revolution is necessary, a socialist revolution is necessary, why is it impossible for you to internalize that the beginning of this whole process that we are engaged in was the rise of patriarchy, and what it needed was to demystify the woman and to now become the private owner of females and their ability to reproduce life that was then commodified. Human beings are commodities and have been since the advent of patriarchy. That's what we are. Yeah. So anyway, here she say, hunting was no longer necessary, and men could no longer find purpose and spiritual identity through the hunt. Spiritual identity through the hunt. Men's work around the settled village was at first unskilled labor, helping the women. They cleared away bush, prepared the ground for cultivation by women. This is still so in many places in Africa, where farming remains traditionally women's work. It is so among some Native Americans, Indonesians, and many others. Men felled trees and prepared timber for construction. Only later did they begin to take over the work of construction design itself, as they also slowly began to take over the care and breeding of livestock. With the buildup, listen to this, with the buildup, what are we experiencing right now today, right? With the buildup of stored grain, excess of resources, the excess of resources. Now I'm talking about today. With the buildup of stored grain, which with ever increasing Neolithic abundance in the settled village sites, appeared a new male profession, the grain guardian. The grain guardian. Organized marauding began in the later Neolithic, and as stored wealth increased, the marauding increased. Stored wealth again. What's his name call it? Marx called it the primitive accumulation
of capital.
Okay.
Hold on, you were gonna read the whole thing.
There's a punchline. Stock breeding also led to the discovery. This is the coup d'etat. Stock breeding also led to the discovery of paternity, of the male's role in breeding, and the importance of genetic selection. Originally, as Thompson points out, the domestication of animals was a religious act, an emotional act in which the animals were first domesticated because of their spiritual connection to the universal religions of goddess religions, right? And so before that, when they were talking about the stock breeding becoming the thing, every culture, including Africa, every culture, including South America and Mesoamerica and the Western Hemisphere, right? Native American cultures all say that the created deity across the world was female, and that the male came later. I've been on reservations in this country that don't have any relationship to each other, and they all still have a goddess figure who's extraterrestrial. She comes from outer space, you feel me? And she creates humans. And then she allows herself to go to sleep and allows herself to be impregnated by the SUN. And this is where the first male came from. It's all these kind of stories where there is Maolisa in West Africa, who was a she who divinely impregnated herself to give birth to the first male. These are all scientific stories that are anthropomorphized, but it's all based in the same thing. Every culture had these traditions where it was said the spirit would impregnate the female, and that's how human beings were here, and that males just opened up the womb so that spirit could impregnate the female. You feel me? That was the belief, right? Because women were almost deified in this magical thing that they do.
You don't know how she got pregnant. She just got pregnant.
Well, these are where stories and mythology come from.
Right.
And I will tell you, they don't necessarily, but just because we don't understand the language doesn't mean they weren't scientific observations. There's a story in Ifa that talks about a shoe, how Oshun was mad. You feel me? She was mad at the male deities because they did her dirty. You feel me? And she had an attitude because she hold a grudge. And she was like, look, I know I came back down here because Baba say do so and do what we got to do. But I got this baby in my belly. And y'all better pray she.
You better hope it's a she. You better hope it's a boy.
You better hope it's a he.
You better hope
if it is born she, y'all gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
And what did Obatala do? Changed the she to a he in her belly. What is that if that is not a scientific mythology about how all of us are female the first trimester of our pregnancy? That's science.
All right, so, and I wanted to get to this before I close, but I think you got to it, Leah. Did how did the son come before the father? Legit question, no being snarky. Thanks.
It's called parthenogenesis, boo. It's called parthenogenesis.
So people like Leah and us, some other folks who are familiar with me, on here on Rootwork on Black Power Media, Mr. Arthritis is knocking. I got like a 2-hour limit, and then Arthritis be knocking on the door, and I have to go answer the door. So, sis, for folks who are not familiar with you, and the folks who are familiar with you, how can they follow you, keep up with your work, holler at you later on, continue this discussion later on until I schedule another Rootwork with you? If folks can't wait for that, for me to schedule another Rootwork episode, how can they get at you?
So my YouTube channel is at Daughter of the Fates. That's FATES, at Daughter of the Fates. That's my YouTube channel. And
that should be in the show description.
Excuse me.
That should be in the show description.
At Daughter of the Fates.
Show, but I just put it in the chat also.
Okay. Yes. And also, if you want to shout out to me directly, you can. Thank you, Strong Black Woman. Post that comment Strong Black Woman just made, because I need that shout out.
Which one?
The very last one. Yup. True. Anyway, I do what I do. Understand? But anyway, my email address is release.heart.center@gmail.com. release.heart.center@gmail.com. Those are the two primary ways to get in touch with me. Yeah. Is to check me out on my YouTube channel, and then also to hit me up directly. I do a book club for the most recent book that we got through, which is called Pure Lust by Mary Daly. And I say it's about the book, but we bring up the Great Cosmic Mother a lot in that book club. I say it's a book club, but it's honestly like, you know how you was in church and you had Bible study on Wednesday? It's like our Bible study.
Okay.
It's our deep political, spiritual, philosophical, breakdown. Right now, there's about anywhere from 12 to 18 women that participate, and it's open to men. I just haven't had any men come through the room yet. You feel me? But it is open to everyone. But right now, primarily, it's women that are participating in the discussion. And I'm okay with that. Women, we need the political education seriously if we are expected to be in a position where we can lead.
I think there might be another show coming on or getting ready to come on. So we're going to get up out of here. My sister, thank you for putting up with my delays. Thank you for coming on here today. Appreciate you. Love you. And we're going to get together in real life.
This was fun. I appreciate you having me, and it was no problem. I know how life be lifing.
Life be life. All right. Thank you again so much. Really appreciate you.
Thanks to all your listeners for tuning in and their great comments, as many as I could read. This was cool. This was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm going to holler at you later on, okay?
All right. That's what's up. Take care.
All right. You take care. All right, y'all. I don't have no fancy outro the way we used to. We working on it. But so we just gonna get up out of here. I appreciate all of y'all, even though I didn't get to some of y'all to answer your questions or to even put it on the screen for the sister to address, even though I may not have agreed with everything. I appreciate you tuning in, appreciate your presence. Please, now I told you in the beginning to like, share, subscribe, because you was probably going to forget. Have you liked, shared, and subscribed this video yet? Please like, share, and subscribe. Like the video, share the link, subscribe to Black Power Media on Patreon until we get out of this funk we are in with YouTube. Appreciate y'all so much. My name is Thandisizwe Chimurenga. You have been tuned in to Rootwork here on Black Power Media, and I will holler at y'all later. All right? Peace.